changing the way IEPs work in Delaware. I'm Jill Horner. This is Comcast Newsmakers. With me is Lieutenant Governor of Delaware, Matt Denn. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's define what an IEP is. This is an individualized education program or an individualized education plan. And for a child who receives special education services, they have one of these plans in place.
Right. Under federal law, every child who's diagnosed with a disability in a Delaware public school is supposed to have an individualized education program. And under the best circumstances, this is a program that's put together with the parent, the folks in the school who work with the child, and with older students, sometimes even the students themselves when you have a teenage student, for example. And the idea, if it's working well, is to have all the goals for that student set out and the tools that you're going to use to help that student achieve.
So a collaborative process, that's the idea behind this, to have the professionals, the educators, therapists, parents involved in this process.
Right.
Is that how the process works?
No. In some school districts it works very well, but we have 19 school districts, and in some districts where it doesn't work well, then parents are very confused and frustrated, and the outcomes aren't always what they should be for students. You have meetings that can often involve 10 or 15 school employees who are working with a student. It's a very intimidating environment for a parent. You're meeting with all the people who take care of your child all day, and having to sort of negotiate at times what that child's going to receive. It's legally very complicated. It's hard for parents, even parents who are lawyers, much less parents who aren't, to sort of figure out how the process works and what their child's entitled to. So the legislature set up this task force to basically say, how can we do a better job with this, and how can we make this a better process for parents and ultimately get a better result for these children with disabilities, which is really who we're supposed to be helping.
A task force was put in place to address this issue. Their findings will come out in January, but some of the ideas are already coming out as part of this task force. It was made up of parents, professionals. Let's talk a little bit about some of these ideas. You say you want to have parents better prepared for when they go into an IEP meeting, to have the tools that they need in order to better have a conversation with the professionals, with the therapist, with the teachers.
Right, and one of the things that we talked about on the task force, particularly from parents, was you shouldn't just show up at the meeting and have all these things sort of plopped in front of you, that your input about what's best for your child ought to be solicited from you by the school long before the meeting happens, that if you're going to be asked to sign off on a bunch of complicated programs for your child, that you ought to be able to take a look at that before the meeting starts and think about it, and show up at the meeting, prepared to actually have a really productive discussion about your child that really reflects your input as well as the schools about what's best for your child.
So to walk in prepared to this meeting, to have that in place, additional resources you say as well for community legal aid, why would that be important?
Well, some of these cases just don't have necessarily happy endings, and sometimes parents really have to fight for their kids to get what they deserve. They have legal rights for their kids that can be difficult to understand, and community legal aid represents a very small percentage of parents who are involved in this process, but not all the ones who could use their help. And one of the things that we're going to be recommending is that there be more parents who have the ability to get lawyers if that's what's needed. If it's just someone to give them advice, maybe who's not a lawyer, but to help them through the process, that we have a group called the Parent Information Center, where you don't necessarily want to have a lawyer in the room, but you at least want to understand better how this works and how you can best advocate for your child. So we're also recommending that they have the ability to help more parents too.
We just have a short time left, but you're also calling for additional follow-up after an IEP meeting.
Yeah, the schools and the school districts have to follow rules, and we want to do a better job of making sure that they're following the rules.
Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We've been talking with Lieutenant Governor Matt Denn. I'm Jill Horner for Comcast Newsmakers.